Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, Life with Patty. And I am here for a book review. So, I always kind of wonder if I'm giving away too much in the book when I'm talking about my book reviews. And I don't want to always give you the end, but sometimes, I can tell you that the ending is good or it's bad or whatever. But the book I'm going to be reviewing for you today is called The Orphan Collector, and it is by Ellen Marie Wiseman. Now, I'll have to tell you, folks, that she is my favorite author as of right now. I've had many different favorite authors at different times of my life. Ellen Marie has only written 6 books. She's working on her 7th. I started following her on Facebook, actually became Facebook friends with her. Not on the one you follow with, but the one that we're, friends. When she wrote her first book, which was The Life She Was Given. And so I have been following her for about 8 years. And she has written about a book a year. Let me tell you, Ellen Marie's books are dark. Okay, there's always very sad, gut-wrenching parts to her books. They're very historical. She does research on her books, and her newest book is called The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, and it is based on a true story. Willowbrook is it's now shut down, but it was a girls' home for, I don't know, like orphan girls or disturbed girls or troublemaker girls or whatever. And it didn't even close down until 1986. That is her newest book, and Willowbrook is in Staten Island, New York. So this time we are talking about The Orphan Collector, and that is exactly what it is there is this horrendously horrible woman and named Bernice, and this takes place in 1918 is when it starts, and this is the first of World War I with the Germans and Hitler, and they're trying to segregate everybody, and this family they migrated to Philadelphia from Germany. And so this takes place in Philadelphia, okay? And it is in this family that lives in this, they call them a row of houses instead of like a block. They're called rows because they're huge apartment complexes, even in the early 1900s. And a lot of people had migrated to Philadelphia. So this family did, and they had a daughter named Pia, and she was about 12 years old. And Pia was very standoffish. She didn't like people to look at her. She didn't like people to touch her. You'd almost think she had some autistic traits to her or on the spectrum of it or something. But they were a very poor family, and the father went off to war, and all of a sudden the Spanish flu broke out, which, it comes back to how they're talking about how they closed all the churches and the picture houses and the opera houses, and you had to wear a mask over your face, and people were just dying left and right because of the Spanish flu. Kind of makes you start thinking about COVID and how it all came back again. And it was almost the exact same things, except for they just did not have the technology that they do now. And Philadelphia was so crowded that people were dying, and they would just put them in the streets with a tag on their toe, and then, the big carriages would come and pick all the bodies up. And anyway, so Pia's father went off to war, and the mother was home with Pia, who, like I said, was 12, and her twin brothers that were like 8 months old. And then the mother died of the Spanish flu, which they were also calling it the purple flu, because your body would, your skin would turn purple almost. And so Pia's mother passed away in her apartment complex, and they were running out of food. And at that time, of course, there was no running water, so you had to go downstairs to the pump to get water and to dump your buckets with your, your pee and poop, your waste. And you had to wash your diapers in water. And so after Pia's mother passed away, she was trying to take care of her twin brothers as best she could. And she knew she was going to have to go out and try to find food for them. They were completely out of food. And, when her mother was alive, she would stay home with the boys and her mom would go look for food or go, I don't really know exactly how they were getting their money for their food, but so Pia was 12, and so she put her brothers in this little locked cabinet in the floor together, feeling so bad for it because she had to lock them there because her mother had passed away. And she also left her mother passed away in the bedroom because she didn't want to tell anybody, or she was afraid they would put her in an orphanage. Well, she left to go find some food, and this woman, Bernice, that lived in an apartment complex across the street from her, saw her leave and thought, how could she leave, or how could the mother let Pia go out with this flu? Why was she letting her out? And then where were the brothers, and who was, all these things were going through her mind. Well, ended up that when Pia went out, she passed out in the streets because she had gotten the flu. And so that left her two little twin brothers in the cabinets in the house on the floor. And, at first this woman, Bernice, went over there to check, and she could hear the babies crying, but she couldn't find them. And finally she found them in the locker on the floor, and she pulled them out, and her baby had just passed away from the flu. And so she still had breast milk. And so she fed the babies right then and there, and it contented the babies. Well, she ended up taking the babies, but she didn't bring them back. And she was probably lost it in her own mind because she lost her husband and her baby to the flu. So when Pia woke up, she was in a church, a Catholic church, and she was in a makeshift bed on the pew. And when she asked them where she was or what had happened, they told her that she had had the Spanish flu and she had been there for a week. Well, of course, she started freaking out because she knew her brothers would be dead by this time if she wasn't home to take care of them. And then once they released her from there, they took her straight to an orphanage. They said, no, until we find your parents or who you belong to, you have to go to an orphanage. So she tried to explain to them about her brothers and that they were abandoned. She needed to get back home to her brothers, and they wouldn't let her go. And she had never seen this Bernice before, but Bernice had seen her, so Bernice knew who she was. And Pia also had this special friend, and his name was Finn, and he lived in the same row of houses that she did, and they became very good friends. And so she knew that Finn would always be there to help her if he could, and he was never around, and she couldn't find him for the last week. Well, it kind of was the same thing. He had caught the flu or something, but he was gone for a while. Anyways, this Bernice woman turned into this wicked, crazy woman that ended up collecting children, and she would go to people's house and say she was a nurse. And if she saw that the mother or the father had passed away, then she would talk these women into giving their baby to her, saying that she was going to take care of it until they got better. And then if they passed away, or she would just never bring the baby back. And she was selling the babies to different people that were richer and could afford them. But she wasn't making it look like she was selling them. She said it was a they needed to give a donation to the church for helping the funding for raising these kids or feeding these children or whatever. And that's how she was making her money. And she was going and doing this with several people. And she was doing it with older ones, sending them off to boys' camps, you know, cross state or something, and still getting money for those. And then she was very prejudiced of the Germans. And so if a child was German, she automatically just wanted to take them and get rid of them because they were German. And she had told everybody her name was Nurse Wallace, not Bernice. And so the nuns thought she was such a wonderful blessing, and she was doing such a great thing. And really all along, she was basically stealing children and reselling them for herself, for money for herself. Now, I don't want to go any farther than that for you because I don't want to ruin the rest of the story for you. But I will tell you, I try to rate my books on a 1 to 5. 5 being mind-blowing, off the top of the charts. Hardly any books do I give a 5. This one will get a 4. Ellen Marie Wiseman has a couple books that I give a complete 5 to, and that is this one that I have read once, and I'm rereading it again, and I'm not going to talk about it right now. I'll talk about when I do the review. This has been a 5. She also did The Plum Tree, which is a 5 in my book. She did Coal River, which is about a 3 in my book, and she did The Life She Was Given, and I give that a 5. So Ellen Marie, you know, I've given her 3 5s, 1 4, 1 3, and I haven't read her latest one, The Lost Girls of Willowbrook. So if you are looking for a good book to read, know that, like my daughter-in-law always says, after she reads one of these books, they're so heavy. A lot of them are so sad. This one I didn't mourn so much as I did like The Life She Was Given or What She Left Behind. Those were books, The Plum Tree, that it stuck in my mind for a week or 2 weeks, but it was such a good read. This one was good, but it didn't do that to me, and that's why it rates a 4. But if you are looking for a really good book to read, a new author, if you've never read any of her books, I highly recommend all of her books. They're all good. You can get them at Target, Walmart, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. She's from Canada, but yeah, she started out with just her first book and just plugging along, and her books hit the New York Times bestseller list now. Number 1, The Lost Girls of Willowbrook hit number 1 like 5 days after it was released for publishing. So amazing author. So I highly recommend this author. I do recommend this book. And if any of you have read these books, let me know. I'd really like to know, I'd like to know how you feel about the books, what you think about the books. If you do read this book, let me know later after you've read it what you think of it, okay? I will be back to give you a book review on this one. Like I said, I'm reading it for the second time. I read it for the first time, and it was amazing. I'm reading it for the second time for a book club that I belong to online. So, yeah, that's why I'm reading that one. And I hope you enjoyed this book review, and I will have more in the future. I'm reading Ishmael right now for another book club that I belong to in town at the library. And I wish I had more time every day because I could read, craft, color, and bake a lot more. So anyways, you guys have a great day. Take care, and I will see you back here real soon. Bye-bye.